We're going to read from the book of Jasher. We talked about in the last couple of messages on the horrible things that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, what the Bible says that were very bad. Now I'm going to tell you what history says. We're in Jasher, the 18th and 19th chapter, and it tells you an extra biblical account of how bad this place was. God said in the Bible that the stench and the sin and the wild and this wickedness just came up to his nostrils, and he had to do something about it. And I'm going to tell you something, the world today is just about like that, isn't it? We need to take lessons from the Bible. Well, we're going to read this here. I'm going to try to read this for you. And it's shocking. This is very shocking. It's shocking. And just before this happened, you know, Abraham was visited by the angels, and then the angels told him what they were going to come down there and do, what God was going to do, and he sent down the two angels. Two angels, right? 2 or 3 witnesses, let everything be established, remember, in the Bible. In those days, all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole 5 cities were exceedingly wicked, sinful against the Lord, and they provoked the Lord with their abominations. And they strengthened in aging abominably and scornfully before the Lord, and their wickedness and crimes were in those days great before the Lord. And they had in their land a very extensive valley. This is a beautiful place. Now remember, when Abraham took his nephew Lot, was an anchor to him, almost just drug him. He was really a problem child. But anyway, he brought him there with him, and he looked out there and he said, now, our shepherds cannot, you have very many cattle, and our cattle cannot live together on the same thing. They eat too much grass, and they water, and you need to separate. You go to the best place or the worst place. You go to the right, and I'll go to the left. And he chose this valley. And this is the valley that he chose. God had blessed this place. And by the way, it's still blessed like this. Much of that Jericho over there, down this Jordan Rift. By the way, you can fly in an airplane, a jet airplane, under sea level for miles and miles all the way down the Jordan Rift. You can fly under sea level in an airplane because it's way below sea level. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, a half-day's walk. And there were fountains of water, and great deal of herbage and surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah went there 4 times a year with their wives and their children and all their belongings to them, and they rejoiced with timbrels and dances. In other words, they were playing music and they were having a rock concert, okay? They're doing this 4 times a year, they're having rock concerts. This is this is way before we had them over here in this country. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all raise up, they would lay hold of their neighbors' wives, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his wife and daughter in the hands of his neighbor, and didn't say a word. And they did this from morning till night, and afterward they returned home, each man to his house, and each woman to her tent. So they always did 4 times a year. 4 times a year, they had just an absolute orgy. And also when a stranger came into their cities, they brought goods which had purchased with a view to dispose of them. In other words, they were going to sell them here. The people of the cities would assemble men, women, and children, young and old, and go to the man and take his goods by force. They'd rob him. And giving a little to each one until there was an end to all the goods, and the owner which had brought them into the land. They would kill him too, and usually torture him. If the owner of the goods quarreled with them, what is this work which you have done to me? Then they would approach him one by one, and they would show him a little which he took, and taught him, saying, I only took this little which you did give to me. And when he heard this from all of them, he would raise up and go from them in the sorrow and bitterness of soul. And when they all had arise and go after him, they drove him out of the city with a great noise and tumult. They just, anybody come to the city, they rob them. This is API. This is normal procedure. API, that's the oil field term. And there was a man from the country of Elam who was leisurely going on the road, seated upon his donkey, and arriving a fine mantle of divers colors, and a mantle was bound with a cord upon the donkey. And the man was on his journey through the street of Sodom. When the sun set in the evening, he returned there in order to abide during the night. But no one would let him into his house. Now this was common courtesy among every place else. If you had a stranger come up and they were in your neighborhood, you would invite them to the house, you'd take care of them, you'd feed them, you'd let them lay down and sleep and all of this, and you'd ask them to do this for several days so they rest. This is common courtesy, but not in Sodom. And at that time, there in Sodom was a wicked, mischievous man, one skillful to do evil. This is poneria in Greek, real evil, ra in Hebrew. And his name was Hadad. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the travel in the street of the city, and he came to him and said, "Whence do you come? And where are you going?" And a man said to him, "I am traveling from Hebron to Elam, where I belong, and I passed the sunset, and no one would suffer me or allow me to enter into his house. Though I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my donkey, and am short of nothing." Hadad answered and said to him, "All that you shall want shall be supplied by me, but in the street you shall not abide all night." And Hadad brought him into his house, and he took off the mantle from the donkey and the cord, basically the girth, and brought them into his house. And he gave the donkey straw and provender, while the traveler ate and drank in Hadad's house, and he abode there at that night. And in the morning the traveler rose up early to continue his journey. And when Hadad said to him, "Wait, comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and then you go," and the man did so, and he remained with him, and they both ate and drank together during the day, and when the man rose to go. And Hadad said to him, "Behold, now the day is declining. You had better remain another night, and your heart may be comforted." And he pressed him so that he stayed again all night. And on the second day he rose up early to go away, and Hadad pressed him, saying, "Comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and then go." And talking about bread, they would feed him bread, but it was more than bread. It was bread and cheese and meat and whatever, Bread means food in the Hebrew language. "And then go," and he remained and ate with him also the second day, and then the man rose up to continue his journey. And Hadad said to him, "Behold, now the day is declining. Remain with me and comfort your heart, and in the morning rise up early and go your way." And the man would not remain, but rose and saddled his donkey. And while he was saddling his donkey, the wife of Hadad said to her husband, "But behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking. He has given us nothing, and now shall he go away from us without giving anything?" And Hadad said to her, "Be quiet. Be quiet." And the man saddled his donkey to go, and asked Hadad to give him the cord and the mantle to tie upon it, in other words, the saddle. And Hadad said, "What do you mean?" And he said to him, "My lord shall give me the cord and the mantle made with divers colors, which you did conceal in your house, and take care of it." And he had to answer the man, saying, "This is the interpretation of your dream. And the cord which you did see means that your life will be lengthened out like a cord, and having seen the mantle colored with all sorts of color means that you shall have a vineyard in which you shall plant trees and all sorts of fruits." He's starting to con him now. This is the con man. And the traveler answered and said, "No, my lord, For I was awake when I gave you the cord, also the mantle woven with different colors, which you did take off of my donkey and put them by for me. And had I answered and said, surely I have told you the interpretation of your dream. And it's a good dream, and this is a interpretation thereof. Now the sons of men give 4 pieces of silver, which is in my charge and for interpreting dreams. And of you only I will require 3 pieces of silver. Now he tells him, you're just dreaming. Now give me 3 pieces of silver because I interpreted that dream, which was a lie. And the man was provoked at the words of Hadad, and he cried bitterly. And he brought Hadad to Sirach, the judge of Sodom, one of the judges. Remember also who else was there. Another one of the judges was Lot. And the man laid his cause before Sirach, and the judge, and when Hadad replying, it is not so, but thus the matter stands. And the judge said to the traveler, this man Hadad tells the truth, for he is famed in the cities for the accurate interpretation of dreams. And the man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, no, not so, my lord, for it was in that day that I gave him the cord and the mantle, which was upon my donkey, in order to put them in his house. And they both disputed before the judge. And the one saying, thus matter was, and the other saying, declaring otherwise. And Hadad said to the man, give me 4 pieces of silver, and I charge you for my interpretation of the dreams. I will not make an allowance and give the expense of the 4 meals that you did eat in my house. And the man said to Hadad, truly I will pay thee for what I ate in your house, and I'll give you the cord and the mantle which you did conceal in your house. And Hadad replied before the judge and said to the man, did I not tell you the interpretation of your dream? The cord means that your days shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle, that you will have a vineyard in which you will plant many kinds of trees, fruit trees. And this proper interpretation of your dream, now give me the 4 pieces of silver that I require as a compensation, for I will make you no allowance. I'm not going to give you a discount. And the man cried at the words of Hadad, and they both quarreled before the judge, and the judge gave orders to his servants, who drove them rashly from the house. And they went away quarreling from the judge. When the people of Sodom heard that, they gathered around them, and they exclaimed against the stranger. And they drove him harshly and rashly from the city. And the man continued on his journey upon his donkey with bitterness and soul and lamenting and weeping. And while he was going, he wept because of what had happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges in 4 cities. These were the names: Sirach in the city of Sodom, Sharkad in Gomorrah, Sabnak in Admah, and Menon in Zeboim. And Eliezer, Abraham's servant, applied them different names, and he converted Sirach to Sakra, to Sakorah, Zabnak to Kezabim, and Kenan to Matzlabim. And by desire of the 4 judges of the people, Sodom and Gomorrah had beds erected in the streets of the cities. If a man came in these places, they laid hold of him and brought him to one of their beds, and by force they made him lie down. And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head and 3 men at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if a man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end, and when he cried out, they would not answer him. In other words, they put him on a rack, stretched his body. And if it was longer than the bed, they would draw together the 2 sides of the bed at each end until the man had reached the gates of death. And if he continued to cry out to them, they would answer him, saying, thus shall be done to a man that cometh into our land. And when men heard all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. This is a bad place. They're like Los Angeles now, and up there in New York City and Portland, Oregon, etc. And when many came to their land, they would give him silver and gold, and cause proclamation to the city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, and not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death all the people of the city would come and take their silver and gold which they had given to him. And those that could recognize the silver or gold which they had given him, they took it back. And at his death, they also stripped off of him all of his garments, and they would fight over them. And he that prevailed over his neighbor took the strongest, the survival of the fittest, in other words. They would afterward carry him and bury him under some of the shrubs in the deserts, so that they did all the days to anyone who came there and died in their land. And in the same course of time, Sarah sent Eliezer to Sodom to see Lot and inquire of his welfare. And Eliezer went to Sodom, and he met him on Sodom fighting with a stranger. And the man of Sodom stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. This poor man cried to Eliezer, supplicated his favor on account of what the man of Sodom had done to him. And he said to him, "Why did you act in such a manner to this poor man who came into your land?" And the man of Sodom answered Eliezer, saying, "Is this man your brother? Or have people of Sodom made you a judge this day, that you speak about this man, concerning the man?" Eliezer strove with the man of Sodom on account of the poor man, and Eliezer approached to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sodom. He hastened with a stone and smote Eliezer in the forehead. Now Eliezer, remember, God helps us, what his name meant. Now this is Abraham's eldest, most trusted servant. And the blood flowed copiously from Eliezer's forehead. When the man saw the blood, he caught hold of Eliezer, saying, "Give me my hire for having rid you of this bad blood." Now he's bleeding. He said, now pay me for having rid you of your bad blood. Just like they used to bleed people. For such is the custom and the law of our land. And Eliezer said to him, "You have wounded me, and you require me to pay you by hire?" And he would not hearken to the words. And the men laid hold of Eliezer and brought him to Shakra, the judge of Sodom, for judgment. And the man spoke to the judge, saying, "I beseech you, my lord, thus has this man done, for I smote him with a stone, that the blood flowed from his head, and he is unwilling to give me my hire." And the judge said to Eliezer, "The man speaks the truth to you. Give him his hire. For this is the custom of our land." And Eliezer heard the words of the judge, and he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. And the stone struck on his forehead, and the blood flowed copiously from the forehead of the judge. And Eliezer said, "Is this then the custom of your people? You give unto this man that I should have given him, for this has been my decision that you decreed upon me." And Eliezer left the man of Sodom with a judge, and he went away. And the kings of Elam had made war with the kings of Sodom, and the kings of Elam captured all the property of Sodom, and they took Lot captive with his property. And when it was told to Abraham, now Abraham goes down, and he rescues them. And at the time, wife of Lot bare him a daughter, and called him Phillips, saying, because God has delivered him and his household from the kings of Elam and Phillips, daughter of Lot grew up, and one of the men of Sodom took her for wife. And a poor man came into the city to seek a maintenance. And he remained in the city some days, and all the people of Sodom caused a proclamation of their custom not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat. They're going to starve him to death and then rob him. Until he dropped dead upon the earth, and they did so. And Palith, the daughter of Lot, now this is another daughter of Lot, which doesn't tell you about in the Bible, okay, saw this man lying in the streets, starving with hunger, and no one could give him anything to eat, and kept him alive, and he was just upon the point of death. And her soul was filled with pity on account of the man, and she fed him secretly with bread from 90 days, and the soul of this man was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the water, or the bread, in a water pitcher, and when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the water pitcher and gave it to him to eat. So she did for many days. Now all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wondered how this man could survive without eating for so many days. And they said to each one, this man can only be, he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for so many days and live as this man has done, without even his countenance changing. And 3 men concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed, to know who was bringing food to him. And Palthith, the daughter of Lot, went forth that day to fetch water, and she brought bread in her pitcher with the water, and she went down to draw water by the poor man's place, and she took the bread from the pitcher, and she gave it to the man, and he ate it. And the 3 men saw Palthith, what she did to the poor man. And they said to her, it is you then who has supported him, and therefore he has not starved, nor changed his appearance, nor died like all the rest. And the 3 men went to the place in which they were concealed, and they seized Palthith, and the bread which was in the poor man's hand. And they took Palthith, and they brought her before their judges. And they said then, thus did she do. And it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore he did not die all this time, and now therefore declare the punishment due to this woman for having transgressed our law. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city. And they took the woman and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes. And the city of Admah, there was a woman to whom they did the same thing. For a traveler came in the city, and Admah abide all night in the intention of going home in the morning. And he sat opposite the door of the house of the young man's father to remain there. So the sun had set when they had reached the place. The young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house, and he asked for a drink of water, and she said to him, who are you? And he said to her, I was this day going on the road, and reached here when the sun sets, so I will abide here tonight. In the morning I will rise early and continue on my journey. And the woman went into the house and fetched the man some bread and water to eat and drink. And after this affair became known to the people of Admah, they assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act. And the judge said, the judgment of death shall pass upon this woman, because she transgressed our law, and therefore it is the decision concerning her. And the people of those cities assembled, brought out the young woman, and anointed her with honey, from head to foot, as the judge had decreed, and they placed her before a swarm of bees. These are probably hornets, which were in their hives. And the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body was swelled. And the young woman cried out on account of the bees, but no one took notice of her or pitied her, and her cries ascended to heaven. And the Lord was provoked about this, and all the works of the city of Sodom, for they had abundance of food and had tranquility amongst them, and still would not sustain the poor and the needy in those days, their evil doings and sins came great before the Lord. Now the Bible said the sins came up. This tells you what the sins were. The Lord sent forth 2 angels that had come to Abraham's house to destroy Sodom and his cities. And the angels rose up from the door of Abraham's tent. After they had eaten and drunk, they reached Sodom in the evening, and Lot was then sitting in the gate of Sodom. And he saw them and rose up to meet them and bowed down to the ground. And he pressed them greatly and brought them into his house, and he gave them food, which they ate. And they all abode all night in his house. And the angel said to Lot, "Go forth from this place, you and all your belongings with you. Yes, you be consumed by the iniquity of this city, for the Lord will destroy this place." And the angels laid hold upon the hand of Lot, upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hands of his children, and all belonging to him, and they brought forth, and they set him without the cities. And they said to Lot, "Escape for your life." And he fled, belonging with all the belongings to him. We know now that Lot's wife looked back. She didn't want to leave, did she? She enjoyed herself there. Now they had already murdered her daughter, Phillips. Yet she wanted to live in that city. It was a real luxurious place to live. You know, there are places in America like that today. This lush places, wonderful, beautiful places, but the politics and the people there are so wicked sometimes. I went to school in Los Angeles area for 12 years in college. And I went through there, and it was rough country, some places down Pico Rivera and things like that. Funny things happened to me down there, not funny at the time. One time I was walking, I lived right there at 605 in Slauson, where I was staying in a little place down there 3 days a week. Otherwise I was driving back and forth. And I did that for a while, several years. And I was walking there by an underpass. This guy come out, and he had a towel wrapped around his hand. And I saw him coming, and I had a gun in my pocket. I pulled the gun out and pulled that gun on him like that, and he took off. He had his hand pointed with a cloth on me just like that, and he had a gun in it. I didn't see the gun, but I knew it was a gun. So he ran off and took off. Just about, I got underneath the bridge, barely on the other side, and I still had the gun in my hand, and I put it in my pocket, and a police officer came up, and they stopped me. And they said, "Did you see a guy here with a towel wrapped around his hand?" And I said, "Yeah." I pulled my gun on him. I said, he was pointing at, he said, "There was a gun in that towel." And I said, "Well, it took off running that way." They said what it looked like, and I said, "Not real well." They said, "Well, come go with us, see if you can pick him out." So I had to go take a ride in the car. I went down there another time, and driving through the city of Pico Rivera, and I carried a Colt 45 on one side of my console and a double-barrel shotgun on the other side. And because things were a little rough. Now things are a whole lot worse than that. I wouldn't even go there. But I was driving there, and I pulled up behind the stop sign, and behind a guy, and this guy jumped in my car. Just jumped in my car. You know, back in those days, the car doors didn't lock when you turned the key on. You know, they didn't lock like that. And he jumped in my car. And he looks down there at the double-barrel shotgun, he looks at the full 45, and he jumps back out the door. Just like that, and he runs off. So I get up there to the stop sign, and the police come around, the police surround me. And they asked me what I have to do with this bank robbery. They had robbed a bank. And I said, "Nothing." I said, "This guy jumped in my car and jumped out of my car." Like that, and they said, "Well, look, you're armed. Are you sure you're not part of it?" I said, "No." I said, "Here's my concealed weapon permit and everything, you know." And so they said, "Okay, let's go and see if we can find it." I said, "I didn't hardly see the guy. I'm driving. He jumps in there. I look over like that. He starts to jump in the car. Well, he jumps and sits halfway down, and then he jumps back out. But they took me with him anyway, looking for him. Well, things like that happen. But down there right now, in that area, I wouldn't even drive through that area. I'd stay away from it. One time in about 19 78 or 79, I drove through all the way across the United States, and I was going back to Indiana, and I was driving through Chicago Heights. And boy, that was spooky. I pulled my Colt Python and set it on my dash. and people were just, you were going down there, it was real slow traffic, and people arm to arm were prostitutes and pimps and robbers. Arm to arm, just shoulder to shoulder. I went down there like that. I didn't know whether I was going to get through that city alone, but they were really looking close until I set that gun up there, and then they just kind of spread out like this. A little bit. Boy, they should have had a Colt Python in Sodom and Gomorrah, shouldn't they? But that's why God destroyed that place, and yet America is like that today. This is America. Try to go up and go through a city. It's scary. I had to go down to Las Vegas from December and all the way to about March and April. And every place I stopped, somebody was trying to panhandle me or do something. Down there in L.A., boy, I wouldn't even want to go down there. The policemen can't even stop the raging, speeding cars down there. It's you look on the YouTube, you'll see people, the police caught chasing people down there. They'll run that car until it runs out of gas. They'll stop and steal another car and go and do the same thing over and over again. Lawlessness. They'll run through people's houses, accost them, steal what they have, go and steal their car. I was driving to church one afternoon at Valley Baptist Church. It was like 30 miles from where I lived to the church. And we were going down Highway 99, and here comes a whole bunch of cop cars behind me. And I'm going down, and I'm in the fast lane, except the road is got a lot of road work on it. They're doing all kinds of construction. And traffic's not going very fast. And here this guy is going down in Meridian. Here comes this guy, and all these police officers after him. He had left, found out he had left Los Angeles area, and they chased him all the way there. And he's going down, and they've got roadblocks all over, and he runs through the roadblocks, and just the people trying to stop you, you know, with the signs and things, he just run by them with the cops right after him. He drove all the way another 100 and something miles before he ran out of gas. They finally caught him. Lawlessness, crime. Look at all the riots we had in 2000. Look at the riots we have in America today. It just, I know God's not going to apologize to Sodom, but we ought to take a lesson from that. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our country if you don't have law and order? Under human government, the full responsibility was to protect the people from the good people from the bad people, and the good nations from the bad nations. That was human government. If a nation does not protect its citizens, its constituents, from lawlessness, they have completely lost all form of government. It's what you call anarchy then. An anarchy. Our Father, we send this message out as a lesson to us today to turn around before it's too late. And Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for even the books of Jasher here that expounds upon what the Bible says. It's just a history book, but maybe we learn from history so we don't have to repeat it. Father, please forgive me where I fail you. In Jesus' name I pray.